I was 29 when the voice came to me, not in a dream or hallucination, but in the stillness between two heartbeats. I just lost my job, my apartment, and the woman I was supposed to marry, gone like mist in the morning sun. I was sleeping in my car behind a gas station outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled like her shampoo. And there, in the silence, it spoke. "Get up, Elijah. Your wilderness is just beginning." No one calls me Elijah. My friends called me Eli, and even fewer of them were still picking up the phone these days. But that voice, it wasn't mine. It sounded older than stone, like it had cracked through the firmament of the sky itself just to reach me. I sat up, the windows of my car fogged with breath and despair. I stared into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone else's eyes staring back, but it was just me, bearded, sunken, gaunt. The next morning, I drove east. I didn't know why, but the name Elijah stayed with me, echoing like thunder in a canyon. For reasons I still don't fully understand, I obeyed that voice. Something inside me had broken open, and obedience, raw, trembling obedience, felt like the only thing left. I reached a town called Dry Creek, one diner, 2 gas stations, and a Baptist church with a crooked cross. A sign out front read, "He who walks through fire will not be burned." It was nearly sunset when I wandered into the diner, pockets nearly empty. I asked the waitress if they needed help washing dishes. She looked me up and down like she could smell every mistake I ever made. "You believe in God?" she asked, squinting. "I believe something's chasing me," I replied. She nodded, like that was good enough. Her name was Ruth. No kidding, Ruth. And she had that kind of quiet strength people only get after burying more than they ever birthed. She handed me a towel and pointed toward the sink. "You wash, you eat. That's the deal." So I stayed. For 7 days, I washed dishes and slept in the church basement, and every morning I read the inscription on that crooked sign like it might rewrite me. On the 8th day, the man came. He wore a black coat even though it was 90 degrees outside, and he walked like the ground owed him something. He didn't order food, just sat at the corner booth, watching everyone, watching me. I felt them before I saw him, like a cold wind curling beneath my ribs. When Ruth finally walked over to him, he said one thing: "The prophet has forgotten the fire." She turned white as bone. That night, the voice returned, but it wasn't alone. I dreamt of flames swallowing cities, of rivers turned to ash, and in the center of it all, a tree still burning, but not consumed. Beneath it, the man in the black coat stood smiling. When I awoke, the church was on fire. I ran barefoot across the gravel, flames licking the stained glass like it was sugar, but no one was inside. The pastor, the congregation, they were all standing across the street, watching in stunned silence. No fire trucks, no sirens, just silence. Then I saw him again, the man, across the street, arms crossed, eyes fixed on me like I was holding the match. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I felt it burn into my bones. Remember. The church collapsed in on itself like a dying star, and that's when Ruth turned to me and said, "You have to go back." "Back where?" I asked. She didn't answer, just handed me a leather-bound journal with the word Testament carved into the cover. Inside was a single sentence, written in blood-red ink. "The wilderness remembers what man forgets." And beneath that, a name I hadn't spoken in years. Absalom.
Emotional, intriguing, confident, cinematic, mysterious, whispery tone, emphasis on keywords, American accent, smooth pacing, natural intonation, slightly sarcastic, occasionally shocked, genuinely surprised, tense before revelations, trustworthy voice, reflective at times, a hint of sadness but confident in the truth, investigative journalist vibe, controlled pauses during climactic moments. Absalom wasn't a place you found on a map. It was a scar carved between the hills outside Bethlehem, Arkansas, where the trees whispered secrets and the air felt older than history. I hadn't been back since I was a boy, not since the night my brother disappeared. Micah, that was his name. We were both 12, though not twins. Twins born on the same day to twin sisters, raised more like brothers than blood could make us. He was the kind of boy who believed in miracles, who carried frogs in his pockets, and could make a slingshot out of anything. And then, one summer evening, while we played near the old iron bridge, he vanished. They searched for weeks. Drones, dogs, helicopters. Nothing. Just his backpack, left on the bridge, zipper open like a mouth mid-scream. My Aunt Miriam never forgave herself, or me, because I was the last one to see him. I never told anyone what I saw that night. Until now. There was a light in the trees. Not a flashlight, not the moon. It pulsed. It hummed like something alive. And Micah, he walked toward it, like it was calling his name. I tried to stop him, I swear I did, but something held me back. Something tall and black and hollow-eyed. And just like that, Micah was gone. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The thing placed one finger over its lips, and I knew, in my bones, that if I made a sound, I would vanish too. I buried it all, became someone else, ran from the bridge, the town, the memory. Until now. Now the voice had returned, the fire had returned, and with Ruth's journal in hand, I drove toward the land of Absalom. The town was even smaller than Dry Creek. Half the buildings were boarded up, the other half looked abandoned anyway. The only place with lights on was a little general store where an old man sat behind the counter, carving something into wood. "Eli?" he asked without looking up. I froze. "How do you know my name?" "Same way I know the river's about to rise. Sky's talking tonight." I looked outside. Clear sky. Not a cloud in sight. The old man finally looked up. His eyes were gray like smoke. "You here to find the boy?" I didn't answer. "You ain't the first, but you might be the last." I slept in my car again, parked near the ruins of the iron bridge. It was gone now, just two rusted beams stretching into nowhere. The river below was dry, bones of old fish and sunken bikes scattered like offerings. At 3:33 a.m., the wind woke me, and then I heard the whisper. "Micah!" Not a memory, not a dream, a voice. I followed it into the woods with the journal clutched to my chest. The trees looked the same, still too tall, still too quiet. I reached the clearing where it happened, where the light had been. And there it was. Again, the same light. But this time, I didn't freeze. I stepped forward. Then, something stepped out from behind the light. It was Micah, or something wearing his face.
Same crooked tooth, same scar on the chin from when he fell off the porch trying to catch fireflies. But his eyes, they weren't right. Too dark, too still. Like someone had drawn eyes onto a mask. "Eli," it said. That voice, it scratched against my memory like sandpaper. I took a step back. "You're not him." It smiled. "What is him, Elijah? A memory? A name? A body? What makes a boy a boy?" It stepped closer. The light behind it flared like a dying sun. The trees bent inward like they were listening. "I watched you run," it said.
The night he disappeared, you could have followed, but you didn't. I was a child, I whispered. You still are. The journal in my hand pulsed, yes, pulsed with heat. I opened it without thinking. A new sentence had appeared beneath the others. The prophet must walk the path of ashes. Suddenly, the ground beneath me split with a sound like bone breaking. Fire erupted in a perfect ring around the clearing. The air shimmered. The not Micah creature laughed, but it sounded hollow now, desperate. It backed away from the flames. You've heard the voice. You think that makes you chosen? It makes you hunted. And with that, it vanished in the blink of an eye, swallowed by the light. Then the fire died. The clearing was dark again. I collapsed to my knees, breath caught somewhere between my ribs and throat. I slept on the forest floor that night. The stars above blinked like old eyes, watching me, judging me. When I awoke, the old man from the general store was standing over me. You saw it, didn't you? I nodded. He handed me something wrapped in burlap. This was your brother's. I unwrapped it slowly. A slingshot. Hand-carved, the initials MC burned into the wood. How did you get this? He looked at me, and his voice cracked like thunder off canyon walls. You think you're the first prophet to run from fire? He told me stories of others who came before, all of them marked by the voice, all of them driven into the wilderness. Some came back, some didn't. One went mad and built a church underground. Another carved prophecies into the bark of an ancient tree that no longer exists. But they all faced the test, he said. And now it's your turn. I asked him what the test was. He pointed behind me. When I turned, I saw the tree. It was dead, blackened, burned to the root, but it still stood. The tree from my dream, still burning, still not consumed. At its base lay a stone altar, and on it, a knife. The old man's voice wavered now. There's something you must sacrifice. I stepped toward it, the air thick with smoke and something holier than fear. On the altar beside the blade was a mirror, old, silver, cracked. I looked in and saw myself, but not as I was. I saw who I could have been. A husband, a father, a teacher, someone who never ran. A man without the guilt, without the scars. The knife was heavy in my hand, and I understood. The sacrifice was that man, that version of me, the one I'd been mourning since the day Micah vanished. The voice returned, softer this time. What you were must die, so that you may become what is needed. I raised the blade. Tears burned down my cheeks like they were made of fire. And then a scream. Not from me, from behind. I spun around. Ruth was there. Blood on her hands, eyes wide. They took him. She gasped. The pastor's son. Same light, same woods. No, I whispered. It was happening again, and I wasn't ready.
Ruth's voice trembled. They came in the night, same light, same burning sound. And then, silence. He was gone. I gripped the knife tighter, the one I was supposed to use on myself, on the version of me that never failed, never ran, never forgot Micah. But now wasn't the time for metaphor. There was a boy to save. Ruth and I ran. Back through the woods, past the bones of the iron bridge, deeper than I had dared to go in years. The path twisted like a serpent, branches clawing at our faces, but we didn't stop. And then we found it. A door. Not a structure, not something made with nails and wood. No, it was carved into the earth itself. A black stone arch, half buried in vines, with ancient symbols etched across the frame, symbols that pulsed faintly as we approached. It opened with a sound like a held breath being released after centuries. Beyond the threshold, a stairwell spiraled down into the dark. The air smelled of soil and ash. We hesitated. Then Ruth grabbed a broken branch, wrapped her torn apron around it, lit it with her lighter, a makeshift torch, and we descended. The deeper we went, the warmer it became, oppressive, like walking down the throat of a living furnace. The walls shimmered with carvings, flames, stars, eyes, and names. Hundreds of names. I stopped when I saw Micah's. Freshly etched, still bleeding. And beneath it, mine. Elijah. I turned to Ruth, who stared at me like she was seeing something ancient and terrible. You were meant to end this, not survive it. Before I could respond, the tunnel opened into a vast underground cathedral. Black stone columns reached into a ceiling so high it vanished in shadow. Rivers of fire ran through channels in the floor, and in the center stood an altar, identical to the one above ground. And beside it, the boy, the pastor's son, barefoot, eyes closed, unmoving. And standing over him, the man in the black coat. His face was clearer now. Familiar. I stepped forward. "Who are you?" He smiled gently. "You know me." And I did. He was me. Or rather, who I would have become had I chosen the fire sooner, had I embraced the voice, the wilderness, the burden. This version of me had never run. He had stayed. He had obeyed. "I'm what you were supposed to be," he said. "But you chose comfort. You chose forgetting." I shook my head. "I chose survival." "No," he said. "You chose silence." The room rumbled. The fire surged. He lifted the boy onto the altar. "He is the next prophet, unless you reclaim the flame." He raised his hand. Fire gathered in his palm, writhing like a serpent. "No!" Ruth screamed. I dropped the knife and stepped forward, hands outstretched. "If it must be done, do it to me. Take me." He paused. "You offer yourself in his place?" I nodded. I remember now. I remember the fear, the silence. I remember Micah, and I won't let it happen again. The fire flickered. Then he laughed, not cruelly, sadly. "You've passed." The fire vanished. The boy blinked, gasped, sat up. The man, my shadow, stepped back into the darkness. "You were never meant to destroy yourself, Elijah. You were meant to remember, to carry the burden, not bury it." And then he was gone. The cathedral trembled. Ruth grabbed the boy. I grabbed the journal. We ran. The stairwell collapsed behind us. Fire surged through the tunnel like a living tide. We burst through the stone arch just before it crumbled to dust. And then silence.
The dawn broke over the trees. The boy was safe. Ruth wept. And me? I knelt in the ashes of the entrance, opened the journal one last time. A new sentence had appeared. The prophet who remembers becomes the fire that saves. There were no more pages after that. It's been 3 years. I live near Dry Creek again. The diner's still standing. Ruth runs it. She makes the best coffee in the state. The boy is older now. Quiet but kind. He draws flames in his notebooks. I think he remembers more than he lets on. As for me, I don't run anymore. I walk the woods often. I listen. Sometimes the wind still calls me Elijah, and I answer. Because in the end, the wilderness doesn't forget. The fire doesn't forget. But neither does the prophet. Amen.